I hope everyone tried that. Have you done installing Angular? Angular CLI. Huh? For that, what we have to do, npm install globally at the net Angular / CLI. After that, we have to create workspace. For workspace, what we have to do, ng new workspace name. What is it? Create application, generate application. Create application is false. After that, we learned what are the files in workspace, files and folders. Then we have to add a new project into workspace. For that, we have to use ng generate application and application name. Application name we given as shopping. Now, once we done that, how to start project? To start project, we have to use ng serve project is equal to shopping. It will start the project. Now, in order to work with the project environment, first now we need to understand what is the file structure of project, how the project works. Lot of things are there. It's a very big hierarchy. We will see level by level, one by one, because we need to understand how actually Angular application works. So yesterday we added workspace. I will open that workspace. So every time you need to just open the workspace that you created. So file, open folder, and it is Angular projects, that is the workspace. Select folder, it opens the workspace folder here. Yeah. Now in this workspace folder, you can see after you added a project, some new files are added. From new files are added. You should know what is the purpose of those files. So after the project is added, now today we will see first the project file system. Project file system. Project file system means what are present in a project. By default, a project is there. What are the contents present in this project? Let's see. In the project, I will say file or folder and a description. A tabular form we will take here. In this, observe first, when project is added, a separate folder is added by name projects. In that, currently we have only one project. That project is what? Shopping. In that, all these are added. All these are added. Because others we know they are related to workspace. They are related to workspace. Yesterday we discussed what they are. Now these are added at the high level. In a project, they have these options. What are these options? Let's see. Actually, at high level, we have a folder called SRC. SRC is nothing but it comprises of all application resources. Application related all resources are present here. What are resources of a application? We will detailedly discuss. Actually, application resources means components, like services like we have guards, etc. All these are present components, services, guards, all these are present inside SRC. What are services? What are components? What are guards? We will learn, we will discuss about them. So your project related all resources are kept in a folder called SRC. In SRC, again, so many will be there. We will see. In SRC, again, so many will be there. We will see them. Initially, at high level, after SRC, you can see another file called, there is a file called browser, browser list, browsers list RC. There is a file called browsers list RC. Actually, browsers list RC is nothing but it is used to configure the browsers supported for application. What browsers are supported for application, you can configure them here. That means sometimes when we develop applications, we strictly design for certain browsers only. And we want our users to use only those browsers. Any another browser, it will not work. If you see some websites like banking sites and all, they will strictly mention that you need this version browser only. Anything other than that, this application will not work. You open Gmail in Edge or Firefox, Gmail will show a alert saying that better use Chrome. That means Google designs its all apps suitable for its browser called Chrome. If you don't use that Chrome browser and you use some other browsers, some features may not work properly. Then you cannot complain because already they mentioned that this is suitable for these browsers only. So whenever we develop applications, we strictly set browsers limit. We strictly set what browsers are suitable for our application. And we will alert users to use only those browsers. That browsers, what are the browsers supported? Those browsers you can configure here. So already some browsers will be there. We can add later. Here some browsers are already there. So Chrome, Firefox, Edge, Safari, iOS, all major versions, and Firefox. Internet Explorer is not there. That means now Angular applications will not run on Internet Explorer. If you are still using Internet Explorer like browser and open Angular application and say not working, that is your problem, because already they mentioned that Angular is not suitable for Internet Explorer. Because I hope you know from 22 January, Internet Explorer dead. No more Internet Explorer. Officially it is removed. So you need browsers support. Which browser, that you have to tell by using this browser list. Next important, there is another file called it is karma config. So conf.js. Actually, a testing configuration file. Configuration file. So actually, Karma is a testing framework used by Angular. So Karma is a testing framework used by Angular. So generally, as I told you, Angular is a developer platform. Generally, you are learning Java or .NET. How do you testing? how you do testing. Java, .NET may have internally some testing library. You can use them. If not, you have to install a third party library for testing them and use them. So Angular by default comes with a testing framework called Karma. So here we need to set the testing related settings that we will learn at the end, how testing happens, how testing is done on Angular applications. We will discuss at the end. So testing related configurations are defined in this file. They are defined in this file. We don't need to touch these files as of now. When situation comes, when we learn that concept, we will come here, right? Another, there is tsconfig.app.json. Already we know this. tsconfig already we have in workspace also. So in workspace also there is a tsconfig. Why we have another tsconfig is nothing but it is configuration. It is TypeScript configuration file for current project. Remember, every project may have different rules for TypeScript. Some projects will have some rules, some projects will not have those rules. So in every project, TypeScript rules can change. So that is the reason every project will have a separate tsconfig file. All projects can follow one rule that is defined in workspace. So workspace also have a tsconfig. Workspace is also having tsconfig and a project is also having it. This is for all projects. This is for only specific project, current project. Every project can have different rules, right? And there is a file spec.json, actually tsconfig.spec.json. So you should know that spec files are related to testing. Spec files are related to testing. So no need to worry about those files. Later when you learn testing, you will understand. Actually, it is for testing the rules written in tsconfig. In tsconfig, some rules are written. Are those rules correct? Are those rules can be followed? We can test the rules. For that, there is a testing file for testing the rules of TypeScript configuration. That is what spec.json. Wherever you see the word spec, it is a testing file. It is a file used for testing, right? Later, when you learn testing, you will see that. So, at high level, every Angular project contains these things. We have src, we have browser list, karma config, tsconfig, and tsconfig spec.json. These are the files. Now, src is a folder. Now we will see what is inside src, right? Let's see what are the files inside src. This is Angular resources folder. What is Angular resources folder? src. What is present inside this Angular resources folder? Let's see again, file or folder and description. That means so many levels are there. Level by level, we need to understand all these files. Angular resources folder is src. In that, there are so many other things again. You see, I will expand this src. In that, so many are there. So these are all present in src. These are all present in src. Now, so many files are there. Now, what is the purpose of these files? We will see. So these are all the files present in folder again. So let's see what are these files. So first important is in src, you have a app folder. It comprises of application resources, resources like just now I said components, services, services like factories. So like pipes, all these are present here. So like guards, 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 etc. All these are present inside app. App contains all these actually. So that means inside SRC, all the components, services are present here. What are component services? I will tell you. We will discuss about that. So app contains all these things. You can see app will contain those. We will look into app, what is present in app. Next level, we will see. There is another folder called assets. And if you are a web developer, then you know assets. It is a folder. It is a folder that contains static resources. Static resources like images, like text documents, PDF documents, audio video files, etc. Whatever you use for a project. Your project uses some images, some text documents, some PDF documents. All these are kept in assets. Assets contains all these. Now the question is, if I don't keep in assets and try to access, what will happen? They will not work. They will not work. Why they will not work? Because in a Angular project, entire mapping is defined. Mapping means for which file, which folder should be used. So link is there, a mapping is there. If you misplace, it will not work. Now the question is, can I change? Can I remove assets folder and put my own folder? You can. But when you change the folder name, put your own name, then make sure that mapping also correctly done. Where that mapping is done, yesterday we discussed. That mapping is done in a file called angular.json. That mapping is done in angular.json. You see here, there is angular.json in our workspace. Open angular.json. Now you can see here, it says that the project root folder is projects shopping. Resources folder is SRC. Resources folder is SRC. Okay. Let's see. Is there anything mentioned about assets? Scroll down. You see assets folder is also mentioned here. This is assets. That means any icons, any images, it can access only when they are kept here. Any CSS, if you want to access, they need to be here. In which folder? SRC. Which file? Style.css. If you misplace, it will not work. Now the question, can we change this? Of course, your wish, your path, your folder, your wish. You create different names, you can put different folders, and you have to mention them here. That means if you want resources to be accessed from some other folder, mention it. You have to mention that here. These all things you are going to see. So where the mapping is defined, the mapping is defined inside. The mapping is defined inside. Mapping is defined inside angular.json. Okay. So assets is that. Assets is this. App and assets. Another folder, environments. We have another folder, environments. Environments is nothing but it is used to configure all environments, all environments for application. How many environments for will be there for application? Every software application will have three environments: development environment, quality environment, quality, and production environment. Production environment. Quality is testing. That means, I hope you already know, entire software development happens in three environments: development, quality, and production. Actually, in real-time projects, entire software development, generally in real-world projects, entire software development happens in 4 servers actually. So we usually have 4 servers. We usually have 4 servers. Generally, we have a sandbox or golden server. We will have a development server. We will have a quality server, and we have a production server. Entire software development in any technology in the world happens in these 4 environments. Sandbox server means it is the repository server. Repository server means all the library which is needed for developing an application is present here. As a developer, you are given access to development server. In development server, we have to build application. Application is built in development server. That means we get the resources from repository server and we build application. After building application, this application is moved to quality server. In quality server, testing will happen. After testing, we will move this to production server. So this server is given to client. That means client will be accessing our application from production server. If any change we have to do, we will not directly do on production server. We will bring this to the development. We do the changes. We move the changes to quality. From quality, we move to production. And very important, when application is moving from one server to another server, lot of changes will happen in application settings. In application settings, lot of changes will be there. Even code also changes little bit when it is moving from development to production. I hope you have learned CSS, JavaScript and all. Actually, when you are trying to use CSS, JavaScript, you will have some file.css. You will have some file.min.css. I hope you know them. JavaScript also, min.js will be there. And you know as a developer that this file is used in development, this file is used in production. We cannot use the file.css in production. We cannot use this in production. For production, separate file. So you learned in CSS and JavaScript all these points, right? That means the code will be changing. When you are developing an Angular application also needs to set up environment. For development, what files to use. For production, what files to use. For testing, from where to access the files. All that environment settings are defined in this folder. They are defined in this folder. So those settings you can learn at the end of the course about how to set up environment for development, production and all. First you have to learn building application, right? So you can see environments. Currently production is false. Production is false means currently the environment is set to development. After development is finished, we will set production true. Then production true means it is ready for deployments. So there are so many settings to be configured. Those all we have to define here, environments, right? Next, there is another file. I hope everybody knows this. favicon.ico. You learned in basic HTML. Favicon is nothing but it is shortcut icon. Am I right? Shortcut icon, or we say fav icon for page, for application. Every application will have a favorite icon, and you know how the favorite icons are applied to page. Favorite icons are common. You learnt in HTML already. Suppose we opened Netflix. So when we opened Netflix, so this is Netflix fav icon. That is Netflix fav icon. And you know how to design fav icons and put them, right? In HTML, you might have learned. So this is the fav icon for your Angular application. Angular application will have a fav icon. If you want, you can change. You can put your own icons. So that is our general HTML, right? Next, we have a page called index.html. I hope everybody knows this. Index.html is nothing but it is the startup page for every project. So every project starts with which page? Index.html. It is the startup page, index.html. Okay. There is main.ts. What is the meaning of main.ts? What is the meaning of main in computer programming? What is the meaning of main in computer programming? I need technical word. Main is called, it is entry point. Main is called entry point. It is the entry point for starting your application. That means application starts from main.ts. That means how main works, I will explain. I will explain the architecture behind this. We will discuss. So main is the entry point for starting your application. That means your application starts compiling from which location? Main. Main will tell from where to start compiling. Main will tell which one to be shown to you when finished compiling. Main decides everything. How it will decide, architecture I will explain behind this later. For that, we need to learn all the files first, then we will see the architecture behind these files. So we have main.ts. It is called as entry point. Main is considered as entry point. And another important, polyfills.ts. Polyfills.ts. This is very important. These files are important for freshers in interviews. Not only freshers, for experienced people also, because sometimes when you try to fake your experience and go to interviews, so these kind of questions will make you stuck in answering because you don't know architecture. Many times people ask like, so can you give us some experience interview questions and answers? It is not like school that you have a question bank for experience questions, fresher questions. What do you think? So on Google, you will search for some interview questions, prepare and go. Interviewer will ask among them, right? That is all silly things, actually. Little bit you need to be matured in understanding the arc, means how interviews happens. Interviews will not happen according to Google questions answers, because every interviewer knows that you people Google prepare those questions and go, right? And he will not ask them, and based on that he will select you, right? Usually, for two things you should know. For freshers, questions will be related to concept. For experience, questions will be related to architecture behind concept. That is simple. So if you are showing experience, prepare for architecture of every concept. So if you are a fresher, just prepare for concept. Prepare for concept means what is main? What is main.ts? That is fresher question. Now, what main.ts contains? That is experience. How main.ts works? That is experience. What is the architecture behind main.ts? That is experience. So, experience questions always are related to architecture behind the concept, not concept. They will not ask you any definitions. They will not ask you what is this. They will ask you how this works. What is the word which is never used for fresh experience? How is the word used for experience? For freshers, what is this? And for experience, how is this? These are the things you need to remember. So, what is main? As a fresher, we know that it is starting point. How the main works, I will tell you. For that, we need to understand the architecture behind this. We will see that. So what is polyfills? Actually, polyfills, it is used to handle differential loading. Is one of the greatest feature of Angular. What is differential loading means? Differential loading means the library is separated according to the browsers. If a old version browser is requesting Angular application, then the library will be generated for old version. If a new version browser is requesting Angular, then it will separate library for new version. The library is differentiated and it is loaded according to browser. Actually, we have two types of browsers. Generally, we have two types of browsers. We call legacy browsers and we call as modern browsers. Legacy browsers can understand up to HTML4. They can understand up to JavaScript 4, ES4. Modern browsers, they can understand HTML5 and they can understand JavaScript ES5 and higher. Now we developed an app. In this app, we are using JavaScript. We are using TypeScript converted into JavaScript. If that means this is JavaScript library. This is JavaScript library. Now what Angular will do is it will classify this library into two. It will divide the library into two, a legacy library and a modular library. Modular is modern library. Now when request is coming from old version browser, then this library will load. If request is coming from higher version browser, this library will load. That means you have two types of libraries in Angular application. And who will decide which library to load? That depends on which browser you are using. And who will decide? Polyfills. Polyfills is responsible for identifying from which browser request is coming. And according to the browser, it will generate library and send. That is very, very good and great. That is what actually polyfills. You see polyfills, browser polyfills. So it uses application imports. That means this is related to browser related. Everything is browser related. Here all the lines are commented here because later they will be enabled when you are publishing the application. Actually, what is the concept is it will import the libraries according to the request of browser. Which library is suitable for which browser? It will differentiate. What is advantage of this? This reduces compatibility issues, browser compatibility issues. So on every browser, your application will run. Either it is an old version browser or a new version browser, everywhere it will work. That is because of polyfills. So what is differential loading? Differential differential loading is a technique of configuring library suitable for browser, library suitable for browser. So legacy library for legacy browser, we have a legacy library for legacy browser, and we have modular library for modern browsers, modern browser, that is polyfills actually. So what is the purpose of this? Main purpose of this is to reduce compatibility issues so that your application can run on every browser. Every web application have a problem with browsers. So if browser is not supporting, several features will not work properly. So that is polyfills, right? Yeah. Now another file we have, styles.css. Styles.css. It is nothing but it comprises of global styles that are used for all components in your application. Actually, every component can have its own styles. Every component will have its own styles. Every component can have its own styles. For all components, we can have some global styles. So that means for every page, you can have a separate style. But all pages also can have one theme. Like that, you can maintain global styles. Some global styles which are used across pages. That is styles.css. So next, test.ts. This is related to testing. So it comprises of test attributes used for testing your resources. This you will see later while learning testing concept. Whatever test attributes are required for testing our components, that means which component to start testing, so from where to access the components for testing, all such information is present inside test ts. This is basically how everything works. This is the basic file system. This is the basic architecture of this. So what is present in SRC? These are present in SRC. We have app, we have assets, environments, favicon, index HTML, main TS, polyfills, and styles and test. And in majority of fresher level interviews, you will find a question asked related to this very much. What is browser of polyfills? What is the role of polyfills in Angular application? And of course, the architecture for main also we will see. Now, this is present inside a SRC folder, right? Now, once we know what are these files, now we will try to understand how they exactly work, the relation between them, how actually works. For that, you need to understand Angular high level architecture. You have to understand Angular high level architecture. Low level architecture later. High level architecture means basic outline. Low level architecture means internally how it works again. For that low level architecture, you need to learn so much in Angular, then you can understand low level architecture. Initially, how actually Angular works, I will tell you. See the process, how it actually works. Suppose generally, so we are developing an Angular, means there are two different flows. I will explain. We are developing an Angular app. So we are developing an Angular application. Okay. This Angular application, so we generally request on browser. We generally request this Angular application on browser. So this is the browser. So on browser, so we request the Angular application. Angular application is requested on browser. Generally, when this Angular application is requested on browser, initially what happens is it loads static DOM. Static DOM is document object model. I hope in HTML you learned what is DOM, right? So static DOM is document object model. Means how the browser works, generally concept of browser works. I hope you all people know the basic browser architecture. Basic browser architecture means how HTML is understandable to browser. So at HTML level, you might have learned. I will just give an overview actually. So generally what happens is how browser works, a small architecture I will tell you. Suppose you written some markup, hello. Whatever the markup you written, this is not understandable to browser directly. Then actually what happens? First, it will convert this markup into bytes. That means it will convert into binary code. The markup is converted into bytes. After the markup is converted into bytes, from bytes, this markup is converted into characters. This markup is converted into characters. Characters means angle bracket, another P, another angle bracket like this. This is binary code is converted into characters. After converting them into characters, these characters are combined and they are converted into tokens. Characters are converted into tokens. Tokens means they are combined like this: angle bracket, P angle bracket. And ordinary HTML learner will call these as tags. And for a professional software engineer who is web developer, these are tokens actually. If anybody says tags, he is a fresher in web technology, because there is no tags in HTML. HTML have only tokens. Tags is just a reference word. You will never see the word tag in any development environment of HTML. You will see only tokens. So tags is general learner's word, tag, right? Actually, it is tokens. These tokens are converted into nodes. These tokens are converted into nodes. These nodes are called, we call these nodes as elements. That means this P becomes a paragraph element. P becomes a paragraph element. If it is an IMG, then it becomes an image element. It becomes an image element. These are called nodes. These nodes are converted into, these nodes are arranged. These nodes are arranged in a hierarchical order. That means these nodes are arranged in a hierarchical order. We have a parent node. Under that parent node, we will have child nodes. They under the parent, there will have child nodes. That means actually you written paragraph. Will directly paragraph display inside browser? No. Paragraph will not directly display in browser. The paragraph is attached to body. Inside body, you will have a paragraph. Inside body, you will have an image. Directly, even you write paragraph or heading or image, it will be in body only, according to the hierarchy. For example, suppose I will show you some HTML page. So here I written only paragraph. I am writing only a paragraph. And in the paragraph, I am writing welcome. No head, no body, nothing. I will run this in a browser. When I run this in a browser, you can see I written only paragraph in this page. And when I run this in a browser, it is displayed. I will inspect and you will see actually the paragraph is kept inside. It is kept inside body. But I never written body. I never written HTML. You don't write, but it will arrange in that hierarchy. This hierarchical order of arranging elements, this is called DOM, DOM. This is called document object model. It is a hierarchical order of arranging elements. And once the elements are arranged in a hierarchy, this will form a layout. It will form a layout. This layout will undergo a process called rendering. After rendering, what will happen is it will undergo another process. Rendering means ready for output. After rendering, there will be a process called painting. And the result of this painting is what you see on your screen. That on the screen you will see hello. This is how actually browser works. So at HTML level, you might have learned this, because without knowing this, you can't say I know HTML. Because if you know HTML, you must know how the HTML works. You must know how HTML runs in browser, right? So knowing about HTML is not about how to write heading, how to write paragraph. Knowing about HTML is how the process works behind. That is very important. That this is basic architecture of browser. For example, see now here, generally I will go to this settings. There is a performance category. In performance category, what I am doing is I am clicking this record button. It is recording. I will refresh the page, means I am requesting the page. It is recording what the activities behind what is happening. It is recording the activities behind what is happening. After recording for 10-15 seconds, I will stop recording. Now you can see it will load all the details, what it has recorded. And in the details, you can see the process, what happened here. You can see the process. So rendering, painting, scripting, loading, all this is the process that happened behind the page. The terms that I given now in the flow, they are all actually browser architectural terms. That means whatever the result you are watching, it is actually result of painting. The result of painting. That means whatever happened in painting, after painting, that result came. Before painting, what happened? Rendering happened. So technically what happens inside the browser, this is browser architecture actually. This is browser architecture. That means everything is presented in a DOM hierarchy. It is in a DOM hierarchy. Let me close this actually. So this is the order actually. Let's see one small. browser architecture I will show you here. This is the basic browser architecture. So these are the browser, this is the browser engines. I hope you people know every browser have a engine. Translating whatever you written as markup and presenting is done by these engines. Chrome engine name is Blink and V8. Firefox engine name Spider Monkey Gecko. These are engines. Edge engine is Chakra Edge HTML. These are engines, browser engines. This is the basic browser architecture. How browser works internally, what it contains in the background browser. This is the basic browser flow actually. This is the flow. Whatever you written in markup, first it converts into bytes. From bytes it is converted into characters. From characters it is converted into tokens. From tokens it is converted into nodes. From nodes it prepares a DOM. This is actually called as DOM. And this DOM is presented. So when you request an Angular application, what will happen first? First, actually what will happen is, so it will load the static DOM. What is meant by static DOM? Means a button is loaded but not working. A checkbox is loaded but not working. Just they loaded. Means all the static DOM is loaded. This is, and before this, lot of things will happen. I told you the process, what happens. What happens, the process is nothing but, this is the process, as I told you. This is the process. The process is, that means before the DOM, what is the concept working in the background? Before the DOM, what happens? Before the DOM, nodes. Before nodes, tokens. Before tokens, characters. Characters, bytes. That is the browser architecture. So when you request Angular application, first it loads the static DOM. After loading the static DOM, now what happens is, actually this static DOM is loaded on an event called, every browser have an event called, it is having an event called DOM content loaded. That is the event. On this event, it will load. That means your HTML page loads into browser on a browser event called DOM content loaded. For example, you see here, this is the page I am loading. This is the page I am loading. I will go to inspect. I will go to network. Where is it? So we will go to network category. In network category, once we will refresh, and you can see DOM content loaded event will fire up. That is the event that fires up, DOM content loaded. On this event, what happens on this particular event? On this event, so this happened. That means it loaded the DOM content. That means converting binary code into characters, characters into tokens, tokens into elements, elements into DOM, and presenting the DOM. All that happens in this event. And how much time it has taken for that? 69 milliseconds. It is not a simple fast job. Lot of things to be done. Why it has taken 69 milliseconds to load? Because lot of things have to be done. First, it should convert bytes to characters, characters to tokens, tokens to elements. It should arrange elements in a hierarchy. All this it is doing in 69 milliseconds means great, good. Now, if any client complained that your website is slow, then as a software developer, we need to monitor where it is slow. Is rendering slow? Is tokenization slow? Is painting slow? Is scripting slow? Where it is slow? And based on that, we change the logic. That is very important. A developer should know this at high level, right? Technically, whatever the page you requested, that means it loads in this event. In this event, that means Angular application loads the static DOM. After loading static DOM, next step what happens is, after loading the static DOM, next what will happen here is, first step is it loads Angular library. It loads Angular library. That means once the DOM is loaded, that means page is visible. In the page there is button, in the page there is text box, in the page there is drop down. Page is ready, but it is not still working. Button click, some action should perform, it will not work. Why? Because Angular is not ready yet. Your static page is ready, all the screen loaded, but Angular is still not ready. Some more work will happen in the background. What is that work? After loading the static DOM, then Angular library will load. It loads the Angular library. After loading Angular library, next step what will happen is, so after loading the Angular library, it will load two important things. After library is loaded, two important things will happen. Actually, who is going to load this Angular library in your project? There will be one file called, I will give that file name, that is important. This Angular library will be loaded by a file called, in your Angular application, there will be a file called app.module.ts. This file contains information about the library which is required to be loaded. For this application, what library is required? That is present in this file. What is that file? App.module.ts. That means which library will be loaded? It will load only the library that is mentioned in this file. In this file, let's see where that file is present in our project. That file is present in projects src app. There is a file app.module.ts. So this is the file. And how you prove that this file is starting? How you prove that this file is starting? Initially, to prove that this file is starting, we should go to entry point and check. What is entry point? Entry point is main. We will go to entry point main and we will see, and you see, and entry point, it is using app module. It is saying bootstrap module. Bootstrap module means the module which is used for startup. The startup module is called as bootstrap module. This is not CSS bootstrap. Suppose you see your computer is loading. Technicians will not say computer is loading. They will say computer is booting. You know that, right? Computer will not load. Computer will boot. Loading is not a technical word. Computer never loads. Computer will boot. And to boot, you need a boot disk. There will be a boot disk. Actually, your operating system uses those boot files to boot the system. That means computer boots. Bootstrap is the process of starting. Is the process of starting. That means in the main, you can see bootstrap module. Bootstrap module. It is saying bootstrap module. So what is the bootstrap module? It is saying that bootstrap module is what? Yeah, the bootstrap module is app module. That app module is which one? App module is here. App module.ts. You observe carefully that app module is that its name is this app module. You see, its name is app module. That is the class. Then in this file, it will contain all the library to be loaded. So whenever you request Angular application, first Angular will not load. First all the static DOM will load. After loading the static DOM, page will be visible to users, but still it is not ready. It is not responding. Then what will happen? App module will come to picture. Who is going to run this app module? Which file? That file is which file? Main.ts. Main.ts file is going to manage this booting process. Understood? That means main.ts is going to load this app module, and the app module will load the library. After loading the library, now two other things will happen. After the library is loaded, next step what happens is, after library will loaded, an injector will load. After library is loaded, an injector will load. What is the responsibility of injector is identifies what are the classes required for your project, and it will inject those files. That means what are the classes required? It will locate the files and it will inject those files. These injected files are actually compiled. They are compiled by using a compiler. It is compiled by using a compiler. And the compiler is compiling. So the compiler is Babel. Babel is the name of compiler. Babel is the name of compiler. JavaScript based technologies use this compiler very much. Babel is the compiler. By using this Babel compiler, it will compile the code. After the compilation is finished, after the compilation is completed, now once the compile is successful, then what happens is, now it converts this static DOM. This static DOM becomes dynamic DOM now. The static DOM becomes a dynamic DOM. After the compilation is done, static DOM becomes dynamic DOM. Dynamic DOM means now it will start responding. That means you click the button, it will pop up. You click a drop down, it will open and show. The functionality will start after this. This is basic architecture. It's not done. It is only one part of architecture, right? And it is high level architecture. Internally, so much other things will happen, right? Initially, the basic process is this. I will save these diagrams for you, right? So this is architecture 1. I will upload this into classroom, right? Yeah. Now important, I hope everybody understood the process. Here, very important, the process of converting the static DOM into dynamic DOM. The process of converting static DOM into dynamic DOM. This process is called as bootstrapping. It is called bootstrapping. If anybody asked what is bootstrapping in Angular, so bootstrapping is the process of converting a static DOM into dynamic. What happens in bootstrapping? It will load app module. App module will load all the library, and it loads a injector. Injector will inject the library, and it will compile the library, convert the static DOM into dynamic. The process of converting static DOM into dynamic DOM is called as bootstrapping. This is bootstrapping. That is how actually Angular works in the background. That is the basic architecture. And very important, actually, see this point. Now, generally, in this architecture, this is in the browser level. That means this happens, everything in the browser level. This is happening in the browser level. Is compiling happened in browser or compile happened in application? Where compiling happened? Compiling happened in browser or compiling happened in application? Where it happened? Compile is happening in browser or application. Compiling is not happening in browser. It is happening in application. Actually, few years back, this compiling used to happen in browser. This compiling used to happen in browser. That means library loads in browser and compiles in browser. And if compiling happens in browser, that technique is called as JIT, just in time compiling. Just in time compiling. But now it is compiled in application level. This is called AOT, ahead of time. JIT means just in time, AOT means ahead of time. If library is loaded into browser and compiled in browser, that is browser level. That means that is called JIT compiling. Angular from 11 version onwards, they started this AOT technique. AOT technique makes Angular applications more faster. Why? Because they will not compile in browser level. They will compile in application. After compiling, the code will come to browser. So if it is loaded in browser and compiled in browser, that is the reason actually JavaScript is both compiled, JIT compiled as well as AOT compiled. JIT compiled means JavaScript can compile in browser. JavaScript can compile before it goes to browser. In Angular, it is compiled before it goes to browser. So if anybody asked what is AOT technique, AOT is actually ahead of time. Ahead of time means, so that means here, some key points I will give, architecture diagrams I will post. Here, so Angular uses two types of compiling techniques. Compiling techniques. One is JIT, another one is AOT. So JIT is just in time. Just in time. So that means it compiles the code in browser. The code in browser. And AOT is ahead of time. Ahead of time. That means it compiles the code at application level. And Babel is the compiler. Compiler with IV. So IV as engine. IV as engine for Angular. Babel is the compiler with IV as engine. IV is an engine, compiling engine. This much in depth not required for fresher level, but at experience this is compulsory. This is where you are tested in interviews, because you don't know compiler of Angular and you are Angular developer. So that's not great. That means you should know compiler, what compiling technique it uses, which compiling engine it uses. Actually, Angular introduced IV from version 11x. From 11x. Before that, there is no. In 10, they started a trial of IV engine, but successfully they started using it from 11. That is actually Babel. Babel is a compiling engine. It is very popular not only for Angular, others also. Actually, this is Babel. Yeah, this is Babel compiler. It is a JavaScript compiler. Not only Angular, React, Angular, Vue, every JavaScript based technology is using this engine. It is using this compiler, Babel compiler. So here, generally, you see in our project, we will go to package JSON file. In this package JSON file, you can see these are all the dependencies. And you see there is a Angular compiler. That means there is a Angular compiler library. That is the Angular compiler library. So where this library we can find, you go to node modules. In node modules, in Angular compiler, you see compiler is, this is the compiler we have. These are, there are so many compiler systems here. This is compiler related some information. This is compiler related details. These are compiler related details. So from compiler, it is accessing, it is having something, and how this compiler works, you are going to learn in later stages, means how this compiler works. But you should know that internally, the compiler used by Angular, the compiler used by Angular is Babel. Already you can see here, Babel is there. So without this, Angular will not work. Angular's compiler is Babel, right? So it uses that Babel as a compiler. Okay, so that is basic thing you have to know. And what happens in the process here? So one more option is, so the process, the process of converting static DOM into, what is it? Dynamic DOM is known as bootstrapping. The process of converting static DOM into dynamic DOM is called bootstrapping. That is the basic things. So this is how actually your Angular application works. But in so much other things are there now, right? So that means what is the hierarchy you observed here is, so the hierarchy is nothing but this. Also I will, this PowerPoint presentation I will upload, you can see that. I showed you a presentation of browser engine and all, I will upload that, right? That detailed architecture you will find there. Actually, what happens now is general, means the general flow I will show here. Generally what happens, client requests Angular app. Client requests Angular app. How he requests Angular app? Yesterday we saw from this particular URL. What is it? http://localhost. What is it? 4200. Client requests this Angular app. Then on the screen, what is coming is index.html. What is there in index.html? It is displayed. This is actually the first point. What happening? You request this, index.html will load. But index.html is static DOM. How it becomes Angular? That means now in the background, what happens when you request? First, what happens is, so main.ts will start. This main.ts will invoke which file? App module.ts. This app module.ts is compiled, right? So that means after it is compiled, then what it will do is, it will load, generally this app module.ts, actually it will load component into index.html. What is component? I will explain now. It will load component into index.html. This is what happens. So client requests an Angular app, index page is coming, but it is not ready. In the background, main.ts will compile, it will load the library required, and it will load a component. Actually, what happens is, see, means I need to show you another architecture now, right? See. Another architecture is basic, means a simple one here. This is nothing but, generally, when you are requesting, this is Angular app, and suppose this is index.html page. Now, how this page delivers anything, how this page comes actually, what happens is we will have factories. Generally we call them as, yeah, we have a factory. Factory is nothing but it is a collection of, factory is a collection of functions and values. A set of functions and values are present in a factory. Now this factory, a set of factories are converted into, they are injected into a service. A set of factories are converted into a service. That means actually we have lot of services. For a different factory, different services will be there. That means we will have different services. For example, actually service is nothing but usually factory means, suppose math. So math related, mathematics related all functions are at one place. Date related all functions are at one place, right? String related all functions are at one place, like this. So that means a set of functions are injected into service. Now what we do is we design a component. That means we design a component. This is a component. What happens is component contains, it contains some presentation. It contains some presentation. Presentation means it contains screens. Am I right? It contains screens and it contains some functionality. That functionality is injected from services. That means which functionality you need, that functionality is injected. That means I need, suppose I am using this one. Yeah. Suppose I need only math functionality. That means I need this math functionality. Then what happens? Only this is injected into it. I need only string functionality. That means only the string services are injected into it. That means now component contains presentation, logic, functionality and everything. This component is delivered to your page. This component is delivered to your page. That means on the page you are watching a component. On the page you are watching a component. You are watching a component on the page. And this component contains all the presentation. That means index page is not displaying directly any content. For example, I will show you a real-time example. This is Netflix. In Netflix, you are watching, this is the Netflix page. But actually, this Netflix have lot of components actually. Remember, in this Netflix, this is header component. That is header component. This is main component. And this is register component. This is register component. They are not designed directly. Separate component is designed and it is injected into index. That is the reason, observe carefully. Suppose in this page, I want register somewhere else. Then you see, scroll down, that register is present here also. That means, have they designed two times? No, they have only one register component, they injected two places. That means entire Angular application is built with components. In the modern generation of websites, it is not pages. It is only one page. Login page will not be there. Login component will be there. Register page will not be there. Register component will be there. Every component comes onto one page. That is what actually single page application. So earlier you have a login page, you have a register page. Now you have a login component and we have a register component. What is advantage of these components? We can inject and use any number of times. That is the specialty. So modern web applications are not built by pages, they are built by components. Netflix is component based, Facebook is component based, Gmail is component based, Flipkart, Amazon, all OTT platforms, everything component based now. They're all component based. So that is the basic architecture. That means how actually Angular application is built. So we have services, we have factories, we have components, and these components are delivered. Now learning Angular, from where we have to start learning Angular? We have to start learning Angular from designing components. These are the building blocks for Angular application. That means you have to learn Angular. That means you have to start learning about components. You need to learn how to build components, how to use these components and design a page. Page is designed in Angular by using what? Components. So what is the starting point for us in Angular? Components. Designing components. So what are these components? How they are designed? We will see practically now. This is all theoretically you need to understand architecture. Practically now we will start designing of pages, components and all. That we will see from tomorrow, right? In the next session. In tomorrow's session, we will start practical now. How to create components, how to use the components, design the pages, interface, everything. That we will continue in the next session. And from today, our new classroom code, the Google Classroom code I will submit here. This is the new Google Classroom code. All Angular onwards, everything will be in this classroom code. Angular related all the topics from today onwards, I will upload into this one. This is the new code. So for this also you use, right? Right. So this is the classroom code. All your classroom related note will be here now. Okay. Then tomorrow we will start practically designing the components and working with them, right? Tomorrow we'll continue. Right? Yes, Seshir, what is your doubt?
Actually, I'm starting from today. So, how can I cover the part which is already covered?
Yes, 1 second, please. Yes, Seshir, what is your doubt? Yes,
Hello.
Seshir, tell me.
Yeah. Actually, I'm starting from today. So, the
From
part
today,
which is covered already in the session.
so much is covered already.
Yeah.
TypeScript
Right.
completely finished. You please contact admin Ramesh.
Okay.
He will let you know about it. Okay.
Okay.